Hello, everybody, and welcome to this SAG-AFTRA Foundation Conversation at Home. I'm Dave Karger from Turner Classic Movies, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our special guest, lead actress, co-executive producer, and now director, of Ozark, Laura Linney. Hi, Laura. Great to see you.
Hi, Dave. Hi.
Nice to see you on my laptop screen.
I know. It's always nice to see you in any form.
So this conversation is posting online after people have seen the final 7 episodes of Ozark, just so that we are all aware. If you have not finished the season, after we talk about some of Laura's earlier projects, when we start getting into Ozark, maybe you want to finish the season and then come back and watch the rest, because we will talk about some stuff that happens. But Laura, before we talk about Ozark, and particularly the last half of season 4, I want to go back to just some earlier projects in your career and start off by asking you, when you think back to having graduated undergrad from Brown, having finished drama school at Juilliard, what were your aspirations at that point? What was the realistic hope for your career?
I wanted to be a company member at the Actors Theater of Louisville. I wanted to be a company member of some great regional theater. And I went into Juilliard when the regional theaters were sort of booming. And when I graduated and came out, the world had changed. And a lot of the theaters were not taking new members, were downsizing, they were sort of in trouble. And I got a job right out of school as an understudy for 6 Degrees of Separation. And I took that. I went right across the street to Lincoln Center and sat in the catwalk and watched that show over and over again and loved it. And then everything just sort of took off from there.
Wow.
Yeah, unexpected.
Yeah, I remember when I met you for the first time 22 years ago now, and I went back and read the article that I wrote on you in Entertainment Weekly magazine, and there was this very funny quote about the part that you had in Lorenzo's Oil, the movie I think from like 92, where you had to walk down a courtroom.
That's right.
Stairs, and you said it was the first time you had ever acted outside.
That's right.
So interesting.
That's right.
You were such a theater person that it must have just blown your mind to be acting like in the real world.
Oh, it was wild. Like I didn't have to pretend I was cold. I was cold. I went downstairs. I crossed a street. I went down a long road. I knocked on a door. It was just all of a sudden like the world sort of blew open, and it was really funny. Like I didn't have to pretend a leaf was flying by, a leaf flew by. It was just it was very foreign and very exhilarating.
There's a lot of people who love you and who have followed your career for these decades, but who say, oh, Laura Linney, she'll always be Mary Ann Singleton to me, from Tales of the City, of course. A character that you've played in several different incarnations of TV programs based on Armistead Maupin's amazing work. What are your recollections on how that role became a reality for you? Had someone seen you in a theatrical production and said, this is our lead? How did it all happen?
Well, ironically, when I was doing Lorenzo's Oil, which was my first job, it was either the hair or the makeup person said to me, do you know Tales of the City? And I said, no. And he gave me the book of the first one. He said, if they ever do this, you need to be Mary Ann. And I didn't think about it. And like a year went by, and then I got the call to audition, and I originally auditioned for something else. And then they called me back in for Mary Ann. And thank God I didn't understand the importance of those books. Thanks God I didn't really understand the scope and how beloved those novels are. And that job completely changed my life, without a doubt. But it's funny now because the generations have turned over, and we're much older now, Dave, than we care to admit. And there's generations who have no idea about Tales. They really have no clue. So I find that it's like Mary Ann Singleton and Wendy Byrde. It's a very funny sort of combination of characters to be known for.
Imagine if they ever met each other, they wouldn't.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, she'd eat her alive with one tooth, I think.
What was it like then to go back and be Mary Ann again, first 5 or 6 years later, and then 20 years later? What did you find that you had to do before you even traveled to the set to kind of get back in a Mary Ann state of mind?
Well, so much time had changed, and Tales is such a sort of a product of its time. And, the original Tales, the world was, in some ways simpler and in some ways more complicated. It was, precursor to, AIDS was there was a terrible foreshadowing of AIDS that was coming in that first series. And the second series, the world is very, very different. LGBTQ had been established. There's an awareness of the trans community, which really was not, although it plays a central part of the original Tales, was not as embraced or really spoken about during that period of time. When we did the first Tales, gay marriage was not, single-sex marriage was not allowed. We never thought it would ever happen in our lifetime, ever. So it was a huge cultural difference. The whole non-binary community was not really sort of identified yet or recognized. Trans men, certainly not even, it was sort of, you were gay or lesbian, and that was it. And then there was the occasional trans person, but it was not the, the diversity that there is now. So it was a very different show to make. And the younger generation of LGBTQ people are very different from the gay and lesbian community that were around when we were doing the original Tale. So it had a very, very different feel.
So you and I met in the year 2000. It was right as You Can Count on Me was about to come out. I went up to Toronto. You were on the set of Wild Iris with Jenna Rollins, for which you won the first of your 4 primetime Emmys. I remember very vividly sitting with you in your trailer. And it was clear that You Can Count on Me was going to be a moment for you. You had already done Congo and you were chased by monkeys. Great story about how you were on the phone with Jean Triplehorn, who was your good friend from drama school. And she was like doing Waterworld.
Yes. Yeah.
When you were trading crazy stories. Okay. Let's talk about You Can Count on Me, because obviously there was alchemy there. There was something going on between really you and Mark Ruffalo and Kenneth Lonergan, particularly. That triumvirate created something special. How did that project become a reality for you? Was that a long audition project? Was it an offer?
No, it was an offer, actually. It was an offer. And I read that script and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, look at this. And then there was some resistance to cast Mark Ruffalo because they didn't think we looked alike. And I kept saying, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. And we did what they call a chemistry read, where we all, we read together, and he was just divine. It was just obvious there would be no one better than that. And then we all went off and made the movie together. So yeah, bonded for life, all of us.
Yeah, at the time you told me that just seeing him, a year later after filming it, or a year and a half, you just would get emotional as soon as
I do. Every time I see him, I get emotional.
Really, to this day?
Yeah. Every time I see him, he makes me tear up a little bit. That's true. He's a divinely good person.
You're a very modest person. I know you don't like to kind of brag on yourself, but when that movie came out and you had the first of your 3 Academy Award nominations for that, did you sense a shift in the way you were then perceived by the industry? No.
Not really. Not really. I remember realizing that the only thing that felt like it had really changed was the contents of my closet. Like all of a sudden my clothes got a lot nicer. Like all of a sudden I had resources, and people were giving me clothing, and all of a sudden I wasn't in sweatpants all the time. Still in them most of the time, but not all the time.
Wow.
So I've never, every once in a while there's a sense that there's been a bump. And so like Ozark, I can feel there's a difference with Ozark, just as far as being recognized when I'm walking down the street and things like that. But that I've sort of, maybe I'm just in denial about it, but I haven't really felt a huge shift or change. And it's been slow and steady.
Right.
I think that's the great thing about having a long career where it's slow and steady, is that you're not really that aware of the peaks and the low points and when things feel good, and they are good, and you're so grateful for that. And when things don't feel bad, but it's not so extreme.
Yeah.
Which makes it easier to deal with also, I think.
let me ask you real quickly about, such an audience favorite, Love Actually. And I was going through the cast and I was like, Laura couldn't have been the only American in that movie. And sure enough, Billy Bob Thornton, has that extended cameo. But really, of the main characters, yours is the lone American. Did you feel at all like an outsider on this Richard Curtis set? No.
Oh God, I was so happy to be there. I loved it so much. I mean, I just, I'm a bit of an Anglophile to begin with. So I just loved being around those actors. It was just heaven to me. And I became close to Alan Rickman, and, Colin Firth and I have remained friends. And, it was a magic experience for me. I just pinched myself the entire time. We all did press together. And I remember they rented the Eurostar, a car on the Eurostar. And we all, like a gang of actors, we all got on the Eurostar together and went to Paris, and we're in Paris. I mean, it just blew my mind. And I remember walking through the Paris train station next to Alan Rickman, who was just, had such a sense of style, and I adored him. I just, worshiped the ground he walked on. I remember walking next to him and being so proud that I was like walking next to Alan Rickman as a professional actor within this group going. It was amazing. It was really amazing.
Has it blown your mind how that movie has taken off in the 20 years since? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, and it's been around now for so long. I mean, I love Christmas movies to begin with, so I was just thrilled to be in something that had to do with Christmas. But it's such a, and that movie in many ways should not have been as successful as it was, or that the subject matter shouldn't have worked the way that it did. I mean, so many other people have tried to do similar things and they just don't work. And that one does. And I think it's just because Richard Curtis is so authentically respectful of love and good feeling, and he's not afraid of it, and he leans into it in such an authentic way that it's not saccharine. Because all that stuff could have gone. I mean, I know they're haters of Love Actually, and that's fine, but you can't deny the sweetness of that movie, and the various incarnations of love that it depicts is really, really nice.
Yeah. For me, very selfishly, this is all, we're talking about you here, but I have to throw this in. The Savages is a very proud moment for me in my career, because at the time I was the Oscar predictor for Entertainment Weekly. And I remember saying, Laura Linney is going to get a Best Actress nomination for this movie, even though it hadn't come through for Golden Globes or Screen Actors Guild or anything. And sure enough, that became your third. I just knew that as soon as the membership of the Academy saw that performance, they were going to love it as much as I did.
I loved that movie. I loved that character. I adored working with Phil Hoffman. I had a really, really good time. I have good cinematic brothers in my life.
You really,
I've really lucked out with the cinematic brothers. I have really good ones.
And I remember you even talking about, because it was the two Phils. It was Philip Bosco and Philip Seymour Hoffman in this movie. But I got the sense at the time, just like as you're saying, that this was a special one for you. The writing, the cast, just everything about it.
So the writing was exquisite. It was just great. And she was such a fun, unpredictable character. And Phil and I, very similarly, the way that Mark Ruffalo and I sort of worked well together, there was a real authentic connection there. I mean, we truly loved each other.
Do you remember the character's first name?
Wendy.
Wendy.
Yeah.
Clearly you're a Wendy.
I guess so. I'll take it.
I know.
I'll take it.
Isn't there a Wendy in Peter Pan?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you ever play her?
I did not. No, I'm not a singer, but
it's not too late.
Should be the geriatric Wendy.
When you think back to The Big C, which is now, that show started over a decade ago. So it was kind of in the middle of its run 10 years ago. Was that something that gave you pause, this idea of 40 episodes of one character, to an extent where it would mean that you would not be able to do as many other projects as you would normally do in that time? Or was that kind of did the script make it an easy decision for you?
Well, I sort of loved the challenge of it. The idea of, placing the journey that someone has with cancer within a comedic context. And that really spoke to me. I've sort of been I mean, all of us, you scratch very lightly, and cancer is not far away from someone's experience, whether it's with yourself or with a loved one or a parent, or, we all have experiences with cancer. And my mother was a nurse at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Hospital in New York City when I was young. So I was very aware of cancer from a very early age. Both of my grandfathers died of cancer. My mother was working on the front lines of cancer for a long, long time. So it spoke to me in a way. And the sort of idea of it was really kind of brilliant, and touched a truth about survival and when your life is threatened, and how do people behave, and what does comedy do? How comedy is a survival technique a lot of times. So I thought the whole idea of it, I could see that it had real potential, and that there was a lot to explore there.
One thing I've never asked you in all the years that I've known you, you and I are both big fans of John Benjamin Hickey, who was the actor who played your brother on the Big C, one of your best friends. Was it like a happy accident that he got this part alongside you as your brother? Were you at that point having the clout to say, this is the guy you should hire? Or was it a combination of the two? How did it all come about?
I had suggested him, but there were certainly other people in the running. And it was a very competitive process. And Hickey really had to jump through a bunch of hoops. And in the end, Bob Greenblatt made the decision. And I'm so glad he did, because I didn't, all I could say was, this is who I love. But there were many other wonderful actors who were being considered as well. And I just, was like, look, this is not, I don't want to have a say in this. I'm too close to it. So you all decide who is best.
So thankfully, at the time, the head of Showtime, Bob Greenblatt, was a major theater.
That's right.
Aficionado.
That's right. So he knew Hickey, and sort of liked the combination of the two of us together. And we had a very long history. So there was already a familiarity, which would, work to our benefit.
Comes through on the show for sure. Okay, so let's talk about Ozark. One thing that I've never talked to you about, my understanding is that you've spoken about a little bit. I've read interviews where you've touched upon this. The idea of you taking the part of Wendy Byrde at the beginning seems like it was a bit of a leap. Maybe it wasn't totally there on the page, or maybe there were things that needed to be fleshed out. Can you tell me about what you wanted changed, altered a little bit, added to between you reading it and you filming it?
I don't think it's what I wanted changed. I think it's always a leap when you are going into a television situation. It is a big leap of faith. And I just wanted to make sure that there was going to be, like with the Big C, I could see it. I could see how I could play that for a long period of time. That made sense to me. And with Ozark, I just wanted to make sure that for all of us, it was a dynamic piece that was that could evolve and change and be surprising. And I didn't know Chris Mundy, our brilliant, wonderful, magnificent showrunner and head writer. So we talked a lot. And I think they knew that if I was going to come on board, that the part would have to be enough so that I wouldn't feel like I was wasting, time, or where I was bored or not, involved. So, everyone wanted the same thing. It was not that I had to stomp around or anything, but you do sort of have to make sure that those things are in place before you sign on. And it is a leap of faith, because if people can talk a great game and then not deliver, or just, sort of pander to you and then leave you in the cold. But this was a great situation. And it was, part of what really made Ozark so special was how collaborative everybody was. It was a profoundly collaborative experience. And I think that shows in the evolution of each character. You can see there's a life teeming within everyone, because everyone sort of had a say, or could make a suggestion, or didn't feel that they had to be quiet and go stand in the corner. Everyone was, and consequently then everyone was deeply invested in this. And it was just enormous fun. I just loved it.
I could tell.
I loved it.
When you think back to conversations that you had with people like Chris Mundy or Bill Dubuque, who created the show and wrote, I think, the first several episodes.
He wrote the pilot.
pilot, or Jason Bateman for that matter, who was one of the executives. When you think back to the conversations you had with all of those people about what Wendy's evolution was hopefully, probably, maybe going to be, and then what it ended up being, are those two things similar, or did it?
Oh, we had no idea. It just sort of organically unrolled that way. I remember the moment where, and I've talked about this before, but when they had written in that I twirl the possum and throw it on top of the Langmore trailer, I remember doing that scene and I thought, how does she know how to do that? How is she not afraid of a dead? How would she want to handle a dead possum? How would she think to do it? How would she know to do it? And how does she know how to talk to all these people the way she's talking to all these people? And then like the penny dropped. I was like, oh, she's not from Chicago. I was like, oh, she's white trash. She grew up, she understands this world in an inherent. So like it just sort of revealed itself. It just made complete sense. And I went and talked to Chris about it. He was like, yes. And we sort of went, and then it just all started to, and then we made the decision that mental illness ran in my family. There's a scene that we have on a boat where we're talking about Jonah. And I remember we all decided that we needed a line that would ground the scene a little bit more, that would ground the sense of suspense about Jonah behaving weirdly with animals, that had to be not just a one-off, but there had to be like maybe the haunting of DNA that was sort of twisted in my family. So we added that. And then that led to a brother who could show up who had some mental issues, and then Wendy possibly having some mental issues as well. And so I was able to play like, it gave me permission to sort of veer off emotionally in sections or behave rather strangely. So it all just, organically unfolded as far as my experience with this character is concerned. And it was, it was Chris and his writers. And, the fact that they were invested in watching what would happen on set and taking what each of us gave them and gave the characters, and then they would take that and move forward with it. I mean, Chris always, I think, had an idea of a structure of what he wanted and the story he wanted to tell, but he always incorporated what all of us were doing into the story and helped us sort of infuse our work into the character in the way that I've never experienced on a TV set before.
What was it like filming those last handful of episodes?
Oh, it was awful. I hated it. I loved doing the show. And we were a real family. And we had just been through the pandemic together. We filmed for over a year. The last season was, 14 episodes that took a long time. And we had a crew who had been intact almost since day one, which is never heard of. And it was a real journey we were all on. So it was very hard to say goodbye. And I've got to say that now that the months are ticking, we're getting further and further away from it. My heart is sort of hurting a little bit more the farther I get away from it. So it was, it was amazing. It was just an amazing time.
So it was very exciting to be watching the episodes. And then at the end, I think it was one in the middle of this last batch of 7, directed by Laura Linney. And I remember hearing from you and Hickey that you were doing this, but I honestly, it had escaped my mind. So I was very excited that you had done that. So, but you've never directed anything filmed before. How did was this something you've been thinking about? Was it Bateman encouraging you? Who was encouraging you?
It was Jason and our producer, Patrick Markey, basically insisted that I do it. They pushed me very hard to do it. And I was very resistant for 3 seasons. And we got to the final season and they basically said, you have to do this. You have to do it. And
why?
They just wanted me to. I don't know. They wanted me to. And my manager called and said, if you don't do this, I'm firing you. She was basically like, this is the perfect, if you're going to do this, this is the situation to do it in. And, Jason was amazing with me throughout the whole process and being encouraging. And I am so glad I did it. And I had a really wonderful time doing it. But I was in an ideal situation. I had a crew who had my back, actors who I was not afraid to talk to. So I learned a lot. I loved it. I had a good time.
Do you think you might do this again on another show, maybe?
Perhaps, we'll see. I mean, I love what I do. I love being an actor. I am an actor first and foremost. So, maybe, but I'm certainly not going to give up my day job. I'm not going to do that.
Good. That makes me happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more things about Wendy that I want to talk about, particularly in regards to this last season. It is so fascinating to see how most of the time she's so quick on her feet, where she's talking to Maya or she's talking to Claire Shaw, and something comes at her and you're like, well, she's not going to get out of this one. And she does, or she manages to come up with the right thing to convince the person of doing the thing they don't want to do. Where do you think that all comes from? Or is it just kind of the stress of the moment and she's able to handle it?
I think she's crazy shrewd. I think she has like a shrewd gene. And I think she's impulsive. And I think she acts very quickly. And fortunately, she's smart, but she's not emotionally mature. So where she gets in trouble is where her emotions come and get her. But it is, it's fun to play someone who has much more courage than I do. Now, she's deeply flawed and ethically unsound. She's brave and she's very courageous. And boy, I wish I could use the good part of that. I wish I could have a little bit of that.
Right. I mean, one of my favorite things is like when she's in the middle of the most stressful situation, but the phone rings and it's like Claire Shaw or someone that she has to be nice to. And then just like the fake friendship comes, I have to be sweet comes on. It's just amazing how she's able to do that and turn that kind of fake thing on. I don't know how she does it, but it's so fun to watch.
I think she's very clear about what situation she's in. She's very diagnostic. She's almost like scientifically diagnostic about the situation she's in, the dynamic that are happening between people, and she knows how to navigate her way through it.
I took note of, I'm going to be a little vague here, of something that someone says about Wendy in this last batch of episodes. And the line is, she's effing soulless. She will rip your heart out of your chest so she gets what she wants. Do you think Wendy is soulless, or is that just someone's? No. Why not? Your case.
No, I think, she's deeply flawed, but she is trying to survive, and she is rabid with ambition to survive, and not just survive, but survive and come out on top, so that all the time that they've spent has not been for nothing. She's not going to come out of this wounded. She's going to come out of this with something. So and she's just single-minded, rabidly focused in a very unhealthy way.
It's for people who love the show and who love these characters and who love the character of Ruth. It's so uneasy to watch the Byrdes and Ruth loggerheads as much as they are, in the ending parts of this show. And I know how much you adore Julia Garner, and vice versa. She worships you. What was that like, just in general, to play that dynamic with someone that you really seem to like a lot, but to just be at odds in this very violent and mean way?
Well, she's so good. It was fun. It was fun to have, a foe, someone to focus on, and someone to be irrationally negative about. And, it was just fun. But the whole season was emotional, particularly the last few episodes were the last two, especially because Jason was directing, or the last one he directed. And, we all were very aware that, we were never going to be together again. And I mean, maybe we will, who knows, but I doubt it. And it was, I don't even know if that's possible.
Oh, one day. The last moment, which people are going to be just talking about and loving, just kind of like the last Sopranos moment, where the screen goes black, and that great last moment with Skylar, who plays Jonah. Was it the last thing you all filmed? Was it close to the last thing you all filmed? Do you remember?
No, we filmed another scene that was just the family. which was really nice. That it was just the family together. And that felt right to us, you
Right.
know? Yeah.
In a general sense, how did you, as a cast member and co-exec producer for that matter, and director, how did you find out what was going to happen?
I learned things. I knew the arc of what was going to happen through the season. That's one of the great things that Chris did, was be very open with us about, you know, we didn't see scripts, but he would tell us, like, this is what's going to happen this season, which for an actor is huge. And for some reason, the culture of television doesn't really do that. They tend to hold scripts and storylines very close to the chest. A lot of times, either they haven't been written or they're afraid they'll be challenged. So the actors don't get that information. And Chris was the opposite of that, which I so appreciated, because then it allowed us all to do a different type of work, a more detailed work, a more, you know, and we were still surprised as things went on. And it certainly, he was not, you know, married to everything he would tell us. We certainly knew it could change, but it didn't. And we were able to sort of place things a little bit and act towards certain phases of the storyline, which we knew were coming. So that was, you know, that's just a gift to give an actor.
I'm sure.
Yeah. The more information an actor has, the better.
I have to talk a little bit about the penultimate episode, where second to last, I'm using fancy words.
Yeah. What happens? Tell me. You have to remind me.
Wendy really kind of loses her mind and tries to check into the mental facility numerous times. And I mean, there were things that we get to see you as Wendy do in that episode that are so different and so fun. Yeah. It's the most unhinged she's ever has been. Mm-hmm. She's like the facial expressions that you have. I don't know if you've watched it yet.
I haven't seen it yet.
Laura, they're hilarious.
Oh, me in the car.
All that
stuff. Me in the car.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was it like to play all that?
Yeah, she's well, it's got to all start to cost. You know, it's got to all start to, like, the stress of it has got to make her crack in some way. You know, it's inhuman to be able to hold all of that. And because she's not, I mean, she may be a little bit of a sociopath, but she's not, I don't believe she's a villain. I don't think she's happy with how she's behaved. I think she's aware that it's not good. I don't think she likes it, but she has to do it. And I think over time, when you consistently behave in a way that you know is against your own personal code of ethics, you start to deteriorate. And she starts to lose it. And then she also does have mental illness in the family. So the question comes, like, what is happening? Is it mental illness? Is it stress? Is she acting? Like, and I love sort of being able to play with that. You know, at times, like, you know, sort of lead the audience one way and then lead them another way, and like not really know what the answer is. That was fun.
I fully agree with you that Wendy is not a villain, but the show at the same time makes you wonder as a viewer why you root so hard for this couple. And I was rooting for them for 44 episodes or however many it was. I mean, I was like, they have to escape. They have to get out of this. What do you think it is about us, about the show, about these characters, that there's this pact between the Byrdes and all of us who watch them?
That's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with Jason. I think Jason is so inherently likable. And it also sort of points out that, like, good people can do really bad things. Bad people can do good things. Like, no one is one thing. No one. And I think as our country has changed so drastically over the past few years since, you know, Ozark was on the air, you know, I think it's a subconscious question that people are asking themselves, you know, which is, who are we? What do we believe in? How do we act? How do we treat each other? What do we need? What do we want? How far will we go to get it? Do we, like, what is our persona? How do we project ourselves to others? Who are we authentically, and what is the persona that we tell ourselves that we are? Like, all of that murky stuff is sort of underneath Ozark. I've always felt. so that it's about identity. And I think people realize that sort of there, but by the grace of God, you know, you can very easily slip into something that you don't know is happening. And, you know, you can all of a sudden turn into someone you never thought you would be.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that can go the opposite way as well. I think people can all of a sudden become a much better person than they thought. They all of a sudden their job is better than they thought. They're able to reach members of their community in a way. I think it's about, you know, how much people can change.
Let me end with a couple last quick things. What did you do when you got home from 14 months or however long it was in Atlanta? You were able to come back and forth to your home.
I was.
But when you were finally home,
yes.
What did you do?
I think I sat on the floor with my kid and just stared at him. You know, and I'm still in a little bit of shock. You know, I'm still a little disoriented that it's over. Not in a bad way, but just in a like, oh, that was a significant period of time. And I loved it. And it changed me for the better. And hopefully it made me a better actress. And I'm so very grateful for it. But then there is just like that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. And it wasn't bad. It was actually good work. You know, so it's something to sort of like, it takes me a while to take it all in.
It's funny because you and I are talking, we're filming this ahead of time a little bit. It's a couple weeks before the show drops, the last episodes drop. So I got to watch them in a 3-day space of time, which was exciting. But at the same time, I was like, well, shoot, now it's over for me.
I know.
And I'm so envious of everybody who now gets to do it. And if I had
a very small club, Dave.
I know, but I'd rather almost space them out so it lasts longer, which brings me to my question. What are you going to do? Are you going to watch them when they come out on Netflix? Are you going to take your time so it lasts longer? What are you personally going to do?
I don't know. I haven't, you're ahead of me. I haven't seen them yet. So, I mean, I've seen sections of them here and there. I've certainly seen my episode that I directed because I, you know, would have been negligent if I hadn't. But I'll probably wait a while, let it sit for a bit and then watch it. I usually take a little time. I like to get a little distanced from it. Right. But I love the actors on our show. I mean, surrounded by great actors, great actors. You know, we had Harris Yulin in the first few seasons. We had Jason Butler Harner. We had Janet McTeer. We had Tom Pelfrey. We had Richard Thomas in this. I mean, it's just been one amazing group of people to be around.
Oh my God. And I can only imagine for some of the actors who, you know, who come at the end, especially, I don't know his name, but the guy who plays Mel, Adam, right? Is his name?
Yeah, Adam. He's amazing.
For him to be in the last
so good. And he's so good.
Yeah. Last thing.
Yes.
Do you know what you're doing now? I had read about something that you were going to maybe do with Maggie Smith and Kathy Bates.
I am. I'm doing an indie in Ireland called Miracle Club with the two of them, which is kind of a dream come true. So I leave for Ireland in a few weeks and do that. Mm-hmm. How's your 1970s Dublin accent coming along? Well, unfortunately, I have left Dublin as a young child, so I am the American who comes back, or the Americanized Irish person who comes back. Okay. Yeah, but Kathy Bates she got it going on. She got the accent going.
She's learning it. Okay. Wow.
She is.
What a trio. You and Kathy Bates and Maggie Smith. I don't care what it is. I'm first in line.
I'm excited to go.
Oh, good for you. Well, Laura, it's just a pleasure to catch up with you a little bit. On behalf of everybody at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I just want to say thank you for being here and just taking this time at such a busy time. Ozark, the last 7 episodes are on Netflix now, and they are phenomenal. So I hope everyone already has watched them or is about to. So Laura, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Dave. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.